So, I already made a video 1 or 2 days ago where I talked about Evernight, right? I gave my thoughts on her kit as I saw it. However, I wasn't as knowledgeable as I was back then, so I think it's a good time to make an update video a few days later, as now I've seen a lot more gameplays and I have a better idea, right? So, what are my thoughts on Evernight? Well, she's solid. However, she is nothing crazy, right? Let me explain. In a sub-DPS team with Cassie, she does actually seem to be obviously best in slot and a, bit of an upgrade. However, it is a little overhyped, right? Current calcs with full E0S1 Cassie team show that March is around a 35 to 40% upgrade at E0S1. Now, this likely means that at E0S0, it's around 25%, meaning she has incredibly similar value to Ceridra for Phenon. It's literally the exact same. E0S0 Ceridra is around a 20 to 25% increase in Phenon's performance in a Phenon team over other options, and with E1 it's around 40%. So as you can see, March is kinda in a way the Ceridra for Cassie, right? So she is best in slot and she is solid. However, I'm gonna be honest, she is not the craziest Cassie investment, and in my opinion there are multiple different investments to go through before March is the next best option, right? However, she does have a really strong E1, right? That E1 can massively increase the Mono Remembrance team's performance in lower target scenarios that aren't so favorable for their AoE damage. And so, if you do go for this E1, depending on what type of content you're tackling, you'll notice a vast, and I mean vast, difference in your team's performance with having March or not, right? Like, for those who don't know, March is E1 gives around a 20% damage increase at base no matter what to all memo sprites including her own on the team, right? However, the lower amount of enemies on field you go, the higher this damage increase becomes, and this is an original damage increase, right? So the number you see is a direct multiplier to the damage, and in one target scenarios, March can give the team and their memo sprites 50% more damage, right? So this actually makes their damage much more dangerous and what would usually be their unfavorable scenarios, and this is where E1 March can really come in clutch, right? So I would recommend you go for E1 March before you go for E0S1 March, as it really helps cover for the Cassie's team's weaknesses, right? Now, let's move on to her main DPS. This is quite a controversial topic right now, and even though she actually can be ran as a main DPS quite fine in my opinion, she does have some glaring flaws, and she of course is weaker than Cassie, right? So, let's get some things out of the way, right? A big problem with March main DPS is simply her scaling. And what I mean by this is, in AoE, she's really fucking strong, right? Like an AoE, in my opinion, she's actually like competitive with Cassie, if not could be better in pure AoE scenarios. However, her damage falls off a cliff the less targets are on field, right? Once again, something that heavily incentivizes pulling her E1. So because of this, when it comes to any boss that is like 3 or less targets, you will notice Cassie taking a significant lead over the likes of March. However, March can be competitive in pure AoE scenarios like something in pure fiction, right? Cassie has the added bonus of, even though her breath attack from her dragon being full AoE, being able to explode it and spam that explosion, which is bounce attacks, right? You know it. This is why Phanon is as versatile as he is in single target and other, content, is because he can just constantly do pure 1 million damage meteors, single target, or AoE. And this is something Cassie can do with her dragon explosions as well. March does not have a mechanic like this, and so unfortunately Cassie is just a better main DPS than her, right? Now, what do I think they could do to fix March's hypercarry performance and put it on the same level, right? So let's get something straight out of the way. I think the number one thing they could do, or like for March in the beta, to not anger people by buffing her too much and directly buffing Cassie too much, however, also not keep her too weak and make the main DPS March fans angry, make her have the Anoxa trace, right? For those who don't know, the Anoxa trace is basically when he's paired with another erudition, give 50% damage boost to the team. However, if not paired with any other eruditions, he gives himself a 140% crit damage buff to massively scale him up in main DPS, right? I think the best case scenario is giving March this exact same treatment. Make it so that in mono remembrance teams, she gives Memo Sprites the buffs, the ones she already has in her base kit. However, outside of mono remembrance teams, when you're running her hypercarry or whatever, she gets a massive buff to improve her hypercarry performance. I think this is the best way they could go about it, because if they were to just overall buff her kit, then Cassie continuously becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and we don't really go anywhere, and it just makes the power creep worse. However, at the same time, this kind of fixes that, right? This makes it so that Cassie doesn't get indirectly buffed, and she does what she does for the Cassie team, but at the same time she has like this alternative way of playing her for the people who don't want to pull Cassie to play her as optimally as possible, right? So that's my take on buffing March through the beta versions, is just to treat her the same as Anoxa, give her the same dual trace depending on her team comp, and everybody lives happily ever after, right? So that's about all I have to say for March. Her best vertical investments is obviously E1. She's really good for the Cassie team, but it's more so a Ceredra situation. So in my opinion, there are multiple vertical investment levels to go through before considering her. And that's about it, right? Now, if people are curious what I think Cassie vertical investment optimally looks like, it's probably Cassie, then Hyacine, then Cassie Lycone, then Hyacine E1, then Cassie E2, and then if I had to guess, it would probably be Cyrene plus Cyrene E1, and then is when you'd actually consider adding Evernight to this team in all likelihood, right? Yeah, you have to go through all these fucking hoops of vertical investments before pulling Evernight is likely the most worth it next option. So let me know what you guys think about March, what you guys want to see going into the future. Sorry, burp. I think she's solid, but she's just not all that great as of current outside of Cassie teams. So all I want is a bit of a buff to her performance in her own team. Right. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. And peace out.